long day. Chair Harmon, Commissioners, Mitch Silverstein with Surfrider. I'll wait to start, in all fairness to the time limits. Yeah, okay, next slide. And next slide again. That's the home that's in question today. That's a more recent image. Staff did a great presentation, but I wanted to kind of give a more recent image, I think 2021, to really show you what that beach looks like today. So there's no speculative future erosion happening. It's already pretty bad. Next slide. And then this is the video. Hopefully it works, and if you could mute it, that would be great. This is also 2021. It's not all Beach Road, this video, but that is, and most of the video is Beach Road homes. So I'll keep playing this video as a reminder of just how hazardous this location is when Beach Road de novos come up. The staff report stated they've identified over 90 cases of unpermitted shoreline armoring on this road, many in response to particularly severe erosion over the past few years. Sadly, that armoring just further exacerbates erosion, and ultimately no amount of armoring is going to protect these homes. What's this going to look like in 2050 with a foot of sea level rise? What about 2-3 feet of sea level rise? That's likely going to occur within the expected lifespan of the home whose permit is before you today. Surfrider's view on this is that the special conditions staff have landed on are compliant with the Coastal Act, the city's LUP, and are necessary. We would push harder on requiring immediate removal of the seawall, but appreciate the sunset mechanism that will require its removal if and when the neighboring properties redevelop and are no longer reliant on it. It's important to note that this suite of special conditions have been consistent across several similar de novo CDPs for new developments on Beach Road that most of you and maybe previous commissioners have approved. The caissons, the open carport instead of an enclosed garage, mean high tide line surveys and removal of parts which encroach on public tidelands, and prohibition of future shoreline armoring are precedents that have already been set. It would be very inconsistent to modify any of them today, and previous applicants may feel compelled to request CDP amendments. And if those are denied, I wouldn't be surprised if legal action is sued if you were to do that today. So I sympathize with the applicants who need to suffer this process, but I urge you to hold strong and approve the staff recommendation on this. The reality is we need to stop building homes on beaches, but this is the best we can do. They're building at their own risk, and beaches belong to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
And no more speakers.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, I will close the public hearing and return to our staff to see if they have any closing comments.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple things. Staff affirm that the issues raised in these comments have largely been addressed in the staff report and associated addenda, and I'll just add a couple points of note. The special conditions of the permit are included each with a stated nexus to coastal resource impacts and have supporting findings in the staff report. And then further, just to reiterate, the staff recommendation for a redesign to include a carport instead of an enclosed garage is not a preference of architectural style as stated in the comments. It is an alternative that's beneficial for the risks to coastal resources as thoroughly analyzed and outlined in the staff report. I'll turn it over to other commission staff and staff council if they have any additional comments.
Great, thank you, Seth. And one thing I just wanted to point out, and it is something that was mentioned in the initial comments, but with regard to the carport design, this is something, again, the commission has itself approved several times before. But at the same time, the city of Dana Point has as well. They've taken action on a number of permits since this item came in. And they've revised the conditions that they impose to a point and do require the carport as part of that in a fashion such that we haven't decided to appeal those actions. And the city itself found consistency with the LCP with regard to that requirement. So I just wanted to point that out, and I'll turn it over to our staff counsel for some additional comments.
Thank you, Mr. Schwing. I would just note that the applicant referenced multiple times the Lindstrom decision. It just so happens that the Deputy Attorney General who represented the commission in that is Haley Peterson, sitting here to my left. And then we actually revised the special conditions in response to the court order in that case to ensure that the removal conditions and issues like that are triggered by a final decision of an agency with authority that has withstood legal challenge if it has been challenged. So it is a final order. There is due process because it can be challenged at the time that the removal order or the red tagging order is made by the local government or other agency. So we believe we're fully in consistency with the Lindstrom case. In response to Mr. Talcott's argument about Special Condition 1 and the revised final plans, I would note that this is a very typical condition that the commission applies when we need to make modifications to the submitted plans. And it's unclear to me what part of this is unclear. There is a bird strike prevention plan with so much detail that it includes things like that the treatment pattern should be 1/8 of an inch wide with a maximum spacing of 2 inches. There's not going to be negotiation between the executive director and the applicant over something like a plan with this much detail. This condition is designed so that it is simply a ministerial action by the executive director to sign off on the final plans. They also mentioned in their letter the caisson plan that's part of the revised plans. It is a caisson treatment and exposure plan. So if the caissons are exposed, then they will be properly camouflaged at that time. We're not redesigning the caissons here. If you go through each of these final plan conditions, they have specificity, they are ministerial, or don't involve discretion by the executive director, or are not fundamentally changing the scope of the development. So we respectfully disagree with Mr. Talcott on that issue. And I believe that concludes my comments.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, I will return to the commission and begin with Vice Chair Hart.
Thanks so much. And I want to appreciate the tremendous amount of work that went into this by our staff, and also appreciate the comments from council, and particularly having Council on Lindstrom here to provide that additional information. One of the when I look at what Mitch just presented, and I think about the mean high tide line requirements, I'm having a little bit of a hard time understanding how portions of this residence are not already in the public trust domain. Can you explain that to me? Because it seems to me the mean high tide line is pretty darn close to where this seawall is or beyond.
Jeremy Smith is our engineer, and he's available online. Okay. Jeremy, can you address this question?
Yes, through the chair. Sorry, I'm getting feedback.
It sounds good to us.
Okay, I'll just power through. The mean high tide line, the closest in date survey that we have shows that it is relatively close to the seawall. I think it was something like 12 feet or so. So it is relatively quite close to the seawall as of the last date in survey. Of course, the mean high tide line is something that's ambulatory and changes with different sand levels. But we don't have any affirmative evidence that the mean high tide line has been surveyed at the base of the seawall. And of course, the seawall would prevent the natural migration of the mean high tide line further landward.
So returning to my comments, so the first thing that, or one of the first things that has to happen is that the applicant has to perform a mean high tide line survey to determine, and I don't know, Jeremy didn't say when that survey was conducted, but this would have to be done prior to the commencement of any redevelopment of this house.
The requirement under the condition is prior to issuance of the permit. That's the first mean high tide line survey that is due. And then they're progressively required, I think, every 5 years after that.
And they pushed back on the requirement of the every 5 years, and I thought it might be helpful just to make a statement about why that is justified by the Coastal Act, if you would, because I know that was one of their points, that the LCP does not require an every 5-year MHTL.
I can take a crack, but I think where your first question sort of leads to the second, which is, it's obviously mean high tide line is very close to the existing house. And so I think we don't know the exact timeline in which sea level rise will reach the house. There, as I think you heard Seth say earlier, and in the report, there is some uncertainty about that, which is why we're tying all these conditions to that mean high tide line survey. But this is a really dynamic environment too, and that's why we felt 5 years was appropriate. It could be every 1 year. We could get different values every year. That seemed a little bit too much, and so I do think 5 years makes a lot of sense given how quickly this beach is eroding. We do feel like 5 years is appropriate.
Yeah, and also just to add, the wording of the condition allows for the Capistrano Bay District to be the ones to perform the survey, which they already perform surveys in this area. So the applicant really only needs to receive the data from the district and submit it on their own behalf. Of course, if the district ever no longer conducted those surveys, the applicant would be responsible for that, but the district has done that for a number of years.
Okay, well, I would think that, I have a lot of concern about this. I'll just say straight up. And I feel that the pushback from the applicant of what I consider to be very reasonable conditions, given the situation as demonstrated by the video, in which we all know at this location, I think it's whether what is called the Capistrano?
The Capistrano Bay District.
Okay, well, they would have had to do it very recently, right, for it to qualify for this permit?
Yeah, the most recent survey that was used in the analysis of this project was from 2024, but there are more recent surveys that have been conducted.
Yeah, I'm concerned about all of the documents submitted by the landowner, their comments here today. I just want to make sure that they're truly in agreement and understand what is being required here, and that they are going to comply with it, because it's a very dangerous situation. For example, the issue with the carport, we discussed that at a prior hearing, but the idea that these carport walls could be dislodged by a storm event and go slamming down the street or the beach into other houses, into people, into the road. That seems like such a clear point. I'm just concerned that the applicant does not understand. He's made a couple statements about living by the ocean is tough. Well, as we've seen from the videos here, this is a very, very perilous location to be building a house. So, I have a lot of concerns about this permit. And I am very grateful to for the extensive work that staff has done. And I think that, it's absolutely mandatory to have all of the requirements in effect at the time the permit issues, including an assessment of what it would take to remove the seawall and the house. So, I think that it's a new day with the public, what's happening with public trust lands, that people that live on the beach and have houses on the beach have got to understand this is public land. When the mean high tide line continues to move landward, it becomes public land. And, we are required to enforce that. So, I will go along with this permit, but only because of the extensive work that staff has done and all of the requirements that are contained here. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Malley.
Thank you. I'll be brief. Great job to staff again. Each one of the times one of these houses come up, it kind of seems like it's rinse repeat, but I really appreciate all that you've done, and I just want to align myself with Vice Chair Hart's concerns and thoughts. I think I made a somewhat snarky comment on one of these, and I'm going to bring back that snark a little bit today. I said, I wonder how many years before I'm allowed to just pull up a chair, sit in their front deck porch and watch TV because it's public land. And so I don't think we're that far away from this, right? So it just kind of absurd to me. But yeah, I have nothing else to say. Snark, done.
Thank you. Commissioner Preciado.
No, I just wanted to make a point about the continued erosion of that beach, and I don't know to what extent the property owners who have housing, who have created protections for their property and have impacted the beach erosion, and to what extent does the public have access right now to those beaches, and it's basically being eliminated in attempting to protect that kind of structure at that beach. So I'm just wondering, is enforcement the alternative? If let's say this project doesn't move forward, how does enforcement occur with all of those property owners that are basically eliminating the beach?
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, there are currently enforcement actions underway with regard to these properties. There have been notices sent, and we are attempting to work with the property owners in order to address that.
The reason I bring that up is that in one of the conditions you do talk about the neighbors making changes, and so it presupposes that everyone's probably in need of making changes. So in any case, I'm confused by this whole development, but I will support Vice Chair Hart's motion if she makes one.
Thank you. Commissioner Wilson, then Commissioner Escalante.
I share many of those concerns, and I do really want to say I appreciate the conditions for all the reasons that are stated in the sections that are mentioned, that are referenced in this report, and I won't go through them all. But I do believe that there is an effort here to not just protect the public safety and the public resources, but also the state interests in relation to these situations where properties get abandoned, properties have significant damage, and then the state, under emergency conditions, have to deal with this, and that falls on all of the state's residences to pay for this. So not only do we have, some pretty significant privilege related to being able to live in or have property and access and entitlement to that space, but then when the stuff hits the fan and people lean on the state to help deal with the emergency and the problem that's been created, that's unfair to everybody else who can't afford that space and who is everywhere else. And it's intentional in a certain degree, because we're moving forward with permits on this, and so I really concur with what is with these conditions strongly, and so that we're protecting not only those resources but also the interests of the citizens of the state of California. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Escalante.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I totally align myself with Commissioner Wilson's.
Through the chair, I just want to make an update that we will be removed from the building at 6:30. We cannot be here after 6:30, so we need to get through the agenda. just to speed things up if possible.
Okay, real quick. Sorry. Then I'll start this problem, another one. But what will be the trigger for the state of California to force some of these very extreme cases of beach loss, erosion, conflict with the main road behind? I know that, there's a takings issue, but what can trigger maybe forcing homes to go on stilts, for example, which may alleviate some of the access issues, some of the safety and erosion issues?
I think we're already at the point of requiring those types of, elevation and other mechanisms to make sure that these houses are out of harm's way, so to speak. So they are, they are sort of elevated up on caissons in these particular circumstances. House still same idea. but to your question, sort of about, when we can anticipate that if in this particular instance, the seawall comes down, but again, like imagine, take this house and multiply it by many across that entire road. When the mean high tide line does come under the houses, those houses are then on public trust lands. And how are we going to manage that as a state? And that is a good question that I'm not sure we have a great answer to yet. It's one of the things we're working actively with State Lands Commission to try to figure out some potential solutions for managing through that problem. Because we have that already in certain circumstances, and it's just going to occur more and more, where we will have, private structures encroaching on public trust lands, taking up beach space, all of that. I mean, that's going to be happening.
Just to close up, I think it's a worthwhile time right now to be speeding those conversations, just because of kind of how things are going to move along the beachfront in Malibu. We don't have really much to say in that, but I mean, common sense, hopefully, will peek its head into those decisions. And, whatever we do in the future is going to prevent some of this, valuable natural resources loss. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
All right, sounds like we better be moving quickly. So I move the commission approve coastal development permit number A-5-DPT-23-0004 pursuant to the staff recommendation. Ask for a yes vote.
Second.
Motion by Vice Chair Hart, second by Commissioner Preciado. They're asking for a yes vote. Any objections to unanimous consent? Seeing no objection, the motion carries. Okay, now we'll move on quickly